Once it's extended out, just put it onto each ball like that. And just drop the pins back in. Obviously you want to drop them in from the top and the bottom in case it wiggles, it doesn't wiggle out. And the same thing here. This one's horizontal, so it's not going to matter. And then you can kind of leave this a little loose for now. Once we get to going and we want to get on the road, we can tighten it up. When you're inside the park, if you're pulling in at tight sites, making any sharp turns, anything like that, you want to try to loosen it, leave it loose. I have a tendency to kind of warp the metal in there and break it. Basically, it's a brake that's in here. So, tighten it when we're ready to go. We're going to go all the way to the on, which would be to the right on this one. And just make it nice and snug. It has nothing crazy, just like that. And go ahead and keep that parallel with the bar, so it's not hanging down, hitting the road, or up hitting this as the trailer turns. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side with the sway bar. And then while we're over here, we can set up the weight distribution bar. Release the cotter pin here. I'm going to drop this down. Take the bar itself, press it up into the hole that's here on the hitch. There's a little pin that presses into that bar and keeps it in there, and it's on a little loaded metal clip. And then we're going to grab the chain that has the zip tie on it, put it on the bottom of this hook, which is the more narrow hook. You're not going to be able to fit it on the top, it won't work. And we're going to just pry that into place. We have a little bar here that's stored in the storage in the camper. We just lift up, and there you go. You're set there. Once the load is put down onto the tongue of the trailer, it'll distribute it from your rear tires onto the trailer, essentially, and you won't have as much tongue weight. We're going to do the same thing on the other side real quick. All right, we're on the other side of the trailer. We've got the sway bar hooked up, and cotter pins in. We have the weight distribution bar on, chain hooked up. We locked it up. And I forgot to mention on the other side, we do need to put a cotter pin in to lock that in, so I'm going to do it over here, and we'll go and do it over there. There is a little hole here that's on the right-hand side. Cotter pin's going to go in, and it's basically just going to lock this in place, so if you do hit a bump or something crazy like that, it won't pop off. Essentially, there's so much load on it that it's not going to move. And the last step is obviously to retract the front jack all the way up, put all the load onto the vehicle. And as we're doing that, it's going to take a little while. You'll see this foot coming up, and when it's at max, which is all the way up, you'll hear the gears pop a little bit and the lift. All right, what is next? Oh, all right. Next step will be the wheel chucks, obviously. So what you want to do for the wheel chucks is get back your vehicle up about an inch or two to release the load on whatever side of the wheels, or pull forward an inch or two. Release the load on whatever side of the wheels that the trailer weight shifted to, and remove the wheel chucks. And then you'll be ready to pull away. All right, so you'll be using an electronic brake with this trailer. It does have electronic brakes. You have an electronic brake controller. You just go ahead and set it to whatever setting feels comfortable for you. Obviously, you're towing 6,500 pounds or so with everything in it, so you're going to want something to help you stop. Probably what I use is about the 25 to 35% range. The brakes are touchy on this trailer, so if you're backing it into a small tight spot, you don't need the brakes. Essentially, you can turn your brake controller all the way down. That'll help you kind of not be as jerky when you're pulling in or out. Other than that, it's just a matter of feel for you. So you just increase your gain or decrease your gain on your brake controller according to however you feel the trailer is pulling behind you when you hit the brakes. And so I wanted to go over the disconnect procedure too for the sway bars and the weight distribution hitch and just the trailer in general. Obviously, first and most importantly, come to the side cubby. Whenever you have backed this into a campsite, obviously we're here in the driveway, we're not in a campsite, but whenever you've backed into a campsite and you're in the position that you want to be in, you have the camper all the way to the driver's side of the campsite, which is usually where your water and electric hookups are. You want to leave for the slide out on this camper about 5 or 6 feet over there. You come and you grab your wheel chucks. You want to chuck a wheel on each side, just one wheel, on the front and the back side of the wheel, so they can't roll forward or back. A lot of your campsites will be fairly level, so you won't be able to tell which side it may roll to, so you want to do both. There are 4 wheel chucks on here. I already have 2 of them set up, and we'll set up another one on the back side. You just bring it over, put it on the wheel, and you give it a nice little bump on the front and the back, just to make sure that our camper's not rolling away. Repeat the same thing on the other side, and then we can go ahead and proceed and disconnect from the vehicle. All right, so then for the disconnect on this, we're just gonna do the opposite of hookup. The main thing I wanted to go over is when you extend the electronic jack down, you can go ahead and release a little bit of load on the rear of your vehicle, maybe say 1 inch to 2 inches of load, of weight, and then just stop right there. It'll make your disconnect procedure a little bit easier. There won't be as much load on the weight distributing bars, so it won't be as much tension when you go to lower them. Just gonna disconnect our pins on our sway bar, pull our cotter pin on our weight distribution hitch, set that up here so we don't misplace it, and then we're going to grab that metal bar, put on the larger end, and just slowly move it down. There is tension on this, so you're going to hear a little bit of bumping and banging as you do it, but it's nothing that you should be afraid of. And then right here underneath the trailer ball, there's that little release pin. You put your finger under it and pull it, that'll drop out. Basically, that was just in the groove here. And you can just set these underneath here. Just so we don't lose our cotter pins for the sway bar, throw them back on there. And we'll set that underneath here too. And we're just gonna go around to the other side and repeat the same process. You can leave all that down for now and make it a little easier when you go to hook it up. All right, so we've got the camper disconnected from the trailer, all the chains, sway bars, weight distributing hitch, pin is pulled, we're all the way up here, wheels are shocked. So we're good to go to level this out. We're gonna level it from front to back right now. That's gonna help with a lot of things inside, especially when you're sleeping or walking around inside the camper, that it's not all unstable as far as the slope of the camper. So basically we're gonna do that same thing that we did earlier on this jack. Press our extend button. Still gotta lift it up off the trailer hitch here a little bit. Now, because we're in the driveway and the driveway's sloped, this is going to be up quite a bit to make it level. But generally, when you're at a campsite, you're not going to be up very high to make it level. In fact, you're going to have to probably come down once you've lifted it off the trailer hitch. All right, so we're completely off the hitch. Generally, what the next step would be is to pull the vehicle up a couple of feet to get the trailer hitch out from underneath the trailer so that we can lower it to level it. But we're in the driveway, like I said, so we're going to have to make it a little higher. Come over here to the side cubby, handy dandy level, magnetic on it. You just take this and set it on the frame here, and you can see your center level, and then adjust from there. Continue going up to get the camper level. And once we reach that point, we're level from front to back. Most of your campsites are going to be level or slightly sloped, perpendicular to the trailer. If they're not, I do have something in there for that you can put underneath the wheel. But the leveling jacks that you're going to see in a minute are not meant to hold the load of the camper. They're just meant to keep it stabilized. They're not leveling jacks, they're stabilizing jacks, so I misspoke there. Some bigger RVs have hydraulic leveling jacks that you can level the entire RV with. They don't put those on a lot of travel trailers. So that's what these are. They're basic stabilizing jacks, so that you don't have a rock when you're inside the camper. So. All right, so now we've got the camper level from front to back. We're going to run around real quick, set up the stabilizer jacks, just so that it's stabilized. There are little ground pads for them. Yellow here says down and up on them. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to put this side down. Have a handy dandy drill with an attachment on it. Put that on here, and we're just going to lower down. Now, as we do this and we reach the bottom, you don't need to worry about how tight they are. This drill's set for about 15 or 16 pounds of torque. That seems to be plenty to give them that extra little bit of oomph, but not too much, just so that they're holding enough weight on the camper to keep it from rocking around. And like I said, we're in the driveway here, so there's a large height difference. When you get to a campsite, you'll see in the back we do those stabilizers. You're not going to have this much of a length on these stabilizing jacks. Technically right now, they're not supposed to be this far extended, so we should have something underneath this to shim it up. We have those levelers that I mentioned earlier that you can put underneath the tire. These are called links levelers. There's various ways you can use them, but you can also use them as spacers underneath here if you need. We're going to move on to the other 4 jacks, stabilizers real quick, just to get them done, and then we'll move on to the rest of the setup. Alright, here's the rear stabilizer. Like I said, there's not as much height. This is mostly what you're going to see at your average campsite. Jack will come down, just center it on there, and then we'll do it until we reach the maximum torque on the drill. And that's it. That's all that you need to do for these. Go around and do all 4 on each corner. And then once you're done with that, we'll move on to the next step. All right, so we're here on the pass-through storage up in the bow of the camper here. This is on the driver's side pass-through. Basically locked, unlocked. There is a key for this if you want to lock both. But we'll just give this a twist. Sticks up. This is our go-to tray for hose, for water, and for electrical. And then we have a tray here that has our sewer Y and our sewer hookup. And then there are a little box of gloves you can use while you're hooking up the sewer so you don't get anything on your hands. Along with these are called sidewinders. They're essentially a leveling system for the sewer lines. So right now what we're going to need is these 2 to hook up the sewer, and these 2 out of this bin to hook up the sewer. And we'll come back here and just set them by our sewer connection. So we're going to pretend here, obviously, because we're not at the campsite, but you'd have something in this vicinity that would be a hole in the ground with a cap that you need to remove to hook your sewer lines into. One sidewinder is going to go here. Down here there's a connection for the galley sink, for the sink in the kitchen that has its own tank and own discharge. And then come over here and set this other one here for the gray water from the bathroom sink, and also for the black water from the toilet. And then we're going to come to the rear of the trailer and grab the sewer lines. Now essentially there's 2 ways to do this. We can grab just 2 lines, but most of the time we may need a 3rd. I'll show you both ways to set this up real quick, and then we'll go from there. Just disconnect your sewer lines. One's going to go here, one's going to go there. These caps on the end, you don't need for anything. They're just for storage. So you can take them and just slide them back in back here. And then when you go to put the lines back in, you can put them on the ends so that nothing kind of leaks out and keeps it nice and tidy. Take this orange handle off the sidewinder, and this is just going to give the sewer line a nice slope to wherever you're draining to, so that it doesn't get clogged up or there's no uphill backflow or anything like that. And we'll just put this right about here under our cap. And you're going to have a little residual water maybe in that pipe from the last time it was flushed out, but nothing to be worried about. We're going to take our sewer connection line, put it on here, give it a nice right-hand turn, and you should feel it kind of lock in a little bit and seal the gasket that's on there. And then we're going to extend the sewer line to whatever length we need. Now these are about a 10 to 12 foot line, so if you are further away, which most of the time you only need about 5 feet, but if you are further away, you have a problem, there is a 3rd line that we can use on the back side of the Y, which I'll show you in a minute. So we've got that all hooked up. We come up to this front one, and we're going to do the same thing here. And I didn't put it quite the angle I wanted to show you the single hookup on this, so let me adjust that real quick. And then obviously there's another black cap on here for storage. You can go ahead and disconnect that. Put your line in. And we'll stretch it out since it's been compressed sitting in the back there. And we're going to lay it on our sidewinder just to kind of work with the slope of this. And everything kind of takes a little bit of finesse and getting used to and trying to figure out what you're going to do. But this process is not too tough. This is a Y. The reason we use the Y, why we use the Y, is because there's 2 storage tanks here. We got to put them into one, into the ground. So we can come together like this with the 2 lines, And then we have two options here. First option, once we're all hooked in, is to keep it like this and to kind of center our drain somewhere. Then take our drain spout like this, disconnect it. We're going to thread it onto our drain. Take this elbow, put it back on there, lock it in place, and then this swivels. So you can take that, put it on there, and lock it in. That's option number one. This is basically a 2 into the drain. The other option would be to disconnect this if we can't quite get to where we need to go, and we can put another line here. Give me just a second. The other sewer line is stored on the other side of the rear bumper. And then we can take this line and hook it up. And then that'll give us more length to get to where we need to go. Say that the sewer drain may be here somewhere. Disconnect this, thread on, lock in, and then we'll thread that in place. And then you've got your Y there. And just come back and check everything when you're done. Obviously, it slipped off of here. Want to have that on top of it so that everything kind of has a nice slope down to where we're going. Same thing over here. And if you do need to slope the third line, you just take a little bit from one side or the other, whichever you have extra sloping material. Take the line off, and we can run that down this way. And then use it for 2 lines. Something along those lines there. And then that is it for the sewer hookup. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is hook up the water line and the electrical. And then we're going to put the slide out, and then we'll be good to go. Alright, so now at this point, we go back up to our bin. We have our electrical line, and there's 2 water lines in here. You can choose whichever one works best for you. Usually when you're hooked up back there at the back of the camper, and the water hookup, the city water hookup is here, you're going to need a longer line. But you can also get away with the shorter line. There's less mess in the campsite, it's a little easier to store, and a little easier to wrap up. So you can start there if you'd like. I'm going to set that out. I'm going to put the larger line back in the bin. And wrapping that larger line up is a little bit more of a pain to get in the bin, since I want to go in a bigger roll. So we're going to take the electrical, come back here to the rear of the camper, and the electrical connection is back here. And this is all pretty straightforward. Just lift this up, electrical connection goes straight in, cord going down. Just push it in, and there's a little threaded nut here. Basically that nut just threads in until you can't do it anymore, and then you're good to plug in your 30 amp connection. Now I don't have a breaker box here that you usually see at a campsite to show you, but there will be a connection that the 30 amp goes in, and then there's a series of breakers. One of them will say 30 amp. A lot of times that 30 amp breaker will be turned off. To get the power, you need to turn that on. But once you're plugged in and hooked up, you can turn the breaker on. That'll turn your air conditioning on inside. It'll also help you power the slide, which the battery does too, if you want to put the slide out with the landline power. And then we'll move on to hooking up our hose. Also, I don't have a hose connection here, except for a regular house hose connection, to show you what it would look like at the campground, but it's usually right next to the electrical box. At this point, just unwind our hose, thread it in there, walk up to the front of the camper, and we want to pop off our cover on our city water connection, maybe residual water in there. You just take the hose line, put it in, and we're going to twist the nut that's on the camper itself, and you're going to go counterclockwise with that, so to the left. And just thread it until it's all the way seated. We do also have a 90-degree elbow that can go on here to make the hose go down to the ground, so it's not putting as much weight on here. I just don't have that with me right now, but that will be in the bin. All right, so you're good to go there. Just take your bins, set them right back inside. Take your gloves off or whatever you had on. And then we can close this compartment down. We're pretty much done there. Water's hooked up, electrical's hooked up, sewer's hooked up. You're pretty much ready to camp. This camper's level and stabilized. We're just gonna put the slide room out, and we'll go inside and figure out how to do that. And we'll also discuss the awning on the other side. So real quick, I also wanted to discuss the pass-through. We have some chairs stored in there, some camp chairs. There's also a little blue bag. Looks like a camp chair, but there's a little camp table, which is labeled. Obviously, there's the levelers, and the large black bag. All right, so there is a large rug here. You can put underneath the awning. I would suggest kind of weighting it down with some chairs and a table, that sort of thing, in case the wind blows. Give you somewhere to sit. A lot of campgrounds do have, especially state parks, do have dirt. If you're going to an RV resort, you'll probably have concrete there, so you may not want this. That is entirely up to you. There's also a broom stored in here underneath that if you need it to sweep out the camper for whatever reason. There's other things in here. There's a tool bag and some other things I can go over a little bit later in case you need them. So basically at this point, we're ready to set the camper up for camping. Now that we've done all of our connections, this handle here just lifts out and we have it set in front of the door. Just in case the door doesn't latch by some accident, when you're driving down the road, the door will not come open. And the handle's like that. And then we'll grab the bottom here and lift the step out. And then there's a tri-fold step. So we're going to fold it down the first step, and the second, and then obviously the third. And then now the steps are all ready to climb up. The door can be latched back. I really don't like the pin setting that came with it from the factory. It tends to kind of come loose, and it has broken already once. So in this front compartment, handy dandy bungee cord. I can use that a lot of times just to go from here to here and hold the door, so that we know that it's not going to get picked up by the wind and kind of ripped away or anything like that. Most of the time in Florida, we're keeping the door closed because of bugs and because we want to use the air conditioning. So this isn't that big of a deal if you're just going in and out, that sort of thing. But if you want to leave it open for a period of time, you can use that. All right, go ahead and stop it. All right, so we're walking up into the camper. First thing we can do is turn on some lighting real quick. This fourth light switch, which is labeled interior living space, you pop the lights on so you can see what you're doing. Open up this cabinet here, and we're going to have a few buttons in here. I'll try to explain what they all do. But the first and most importantly, so we can have some space and see where we're at, is to get that slide room out. I recommend having somebody stand outside one of the windows in the slide room, just to kind of say if you're going to hit anything. A lot of your campsites will have trees or electrical connection where there's a 4x4 post, that sort of thing. So you want to make sure, like I mentioned earlier, to leave enough space on the driver's side of the camper for the slide room. It's about 4 or 5 feet. 5 to 6 feet of space would be fine. Slide room button is up here, in and out, pretty basic. We're all the way in right now. We're going to go out. And it's nothing crazy fast. Obviously, it's nice and slow and controlled. And we're just going to hold the button down until it bottoms out. Once it bottoms out, that's the only thing you need to do. There's nothing that you need to put into place or anything like that. All right, now that the slide room is all the way out, which you missed because the camera is on the slide room right now, we'll do a little video of that in a minute. We can do a few other things here. If you want to turn on the gas water heater or the electric water heater, I'd recommend electric just because it works a little bit better than the gas. But you can also use gas if you'd like. There's 2 switches here, one's for gas and one's for electric. You just flip it on and that'll start heating the water. We are hooked up to our city water at this point, and we do have water flowing into the trailer. Now the important thing to remember with this is we're going to need to bleed off all water lines to get all the air out, just so that the tank fills and warms the water, and we get all the air out of the fresh water lines as well. We'll go over that in a minute. And you can turn your electrical on there. I'm going to turn that back off since we're not using it right now. And you can also check the level of all your tanks here and the battery level. We really don't need to mess with that right now because we're hooked up. Sitting in this box of these 2 controls is your awning. This is awning in and out. To get the awning down, only thing we need to press is this, and then there's some lock pins on the awning that I'll show you. but essentially it's pretty straightforward, out or in. So right now we're going to go out. I'm going to hold this out button down. If you come outside real quick, so that you can see the awning going down. We have a few palm trees here in the driveway that may be in the way a little bit, but I'll just give you a visual of that. And we're just holding the out button this entire time on the awning. Right now the awning is all the way out. So just come in here real quick and I'll show you these this wing nut or circular nut to lock this down. We're just going to spin this clockwise, obviously, to lock it down. And that's going to make sure that this doesn't lift up if we get a little bit of wind. Important thing to remember with the awning is if you're going to go out for the day, to not leave it out. Especially in Florida, the storm can roll up and we'll have 20 or 30 mile an hour winds real quick. And that will rip the awning off. It's not meant for that kind of wind. If you do see a storm coming in, if it's not tied down, I'd recommend pulling it up. Those wing nuts, the only thing you need to remember when we go to put this back up, which I'll show you in a second, those need to be loosened. Other than that, your awning's good to go right now. Alright, so we're going to take the awning down, put it back in, just loosen this wing nut, and we'll loosen this one over here. And then we'll step back up inside and push the in button on the awning control. And that's back up in your box again, and we're just going to essentially push in. And the awning will slowly go back up. And the way the brackets do work, you'll hear a clank or a bang or a little bit of noise as it's going. It's nothing to worry about. That's just the nature of the beast with these awnings when you're bringing them in. When it gets to the end, it's going to bang a little bit, and that'll be it. And that's all the way in. There's nothing you need to do to lock it into place, and you're ready to go there. Alright, so real quick, there are some light switch controls in here. The main ones we're going to have to worry about is the interior living space main switch. That is all of the ceiling lights in this interior living space. They have a switch on them where you can turn them on and off. But you can also leave them all on, and when you're going to exit the door, turn the switch off, and they will all go off. That's the fourth switch, it's labeled. The first switch is the porch and bug light. There's a porch light right here and under the step, and it's kind of a tinted color for bugs. It's a yellow colored light. You turn that one on and leave that one on, so when you're out, if you're out at night or sitting on the porch. The third one, there is an LED strip under the awning for the porch lighting. It lights up a white LED strip and two blue circular LEDs in the outside speakers. You flip that one on. The third switch is a floodlight on the back side of the camper. On the driver's side, they call it a security light. I never use it. It'll kind of tick off your neighbors in the campground because it is very bright. But if you do have some need to use it, you can turn that on and off here as well. So I'm going to turn off these other two porch lights right now since we don't need them. And we'll continue going over the interior. Basically, your setup at this point is you have your camper hooked up, your electrical running, your air conditioning running. You want to come over to the air conditioning unit, and you want to turn it to high, and you want to turn it to cool house. And you set it your temperature you want. Doesn't matter, but it will freeze you out at night. If you do set it below 70, it gets kind of cold in here. I'd recommend during the day somewhere in 75 range. It doesn't matter to me. It's whatever's comfortable for you. Now, there's two things on the air conditioning. The first one is obviously the thermostat, being on cool and high, and then setting the temperature. The second thing is the air conditioning control unit. On this unit, there are little switches you can flip up here to allow the air to flow into the living space, or to put it primarily into the duct system, which runs through the camper. And there's several ducts that go this way up into the back bunk room. There's a duct back there as well, and there's also a duct up in the front living room. So if you have this open, it's going to flow into here. If you have it closed, there'll be greater airflow to the back room and to the front room. When you're first getting the camper cooled down, you might want to leave it open, but it's up to you. It doesn't matter. Whatever you feel is comfortable. I just want you to know about it. Next thing we're going to do in here is you can turn on the lighting, but we'll go over the refrigerator. Important thing to remember about this refrigerator is it runs on gas and electric. So for refrigerators in the on position, it's going to say on. There will be gas flowing to it while you're driving down the road. and the battery has an igniter and ignites a flame back there, and it actually cools the refrigerator. There's a button here to turn on it auto. We want to have that auto light on, and we want to have this on. There's a little instruction manual sticker on the top door of the freezer you can read, and that kind of tells you the same thing that I just went over. But essentially, we want it on and on auto. So it has the ability to select if you hook up to electrical, it'll run on electric. If you hook up to gas or you disconnect electrical, it'll run on gas when you're towing it down the road, and it'll keep the food frozen and cold, refrigerated. Inside the refrigerator, that works the same way. The other important thing to remember with the refrigerator, when you go to close the door, even though it looks like it's closed, it's not. You can be driving down the road and it'll pop open. Or there can be a pressure change inside the camper, it'll pop open, you'll lose a lot of your cold air. This isn't necessarily like your refrigerator at home, so it doesn't cool off quite as easily. It takes a little more work for it. So when you close these doors, you want to listen for a click and make sure that they're clicked in. And that's how you know that door is going to stay latched at all times. The next thing, obviously you have a microwave. Works just like any other microwave. If you are using the stove to cook, you want to definitely use your fan. There's also a stove light here. To light this, it's very easy. We're going to turn the burner to light and then twist the spark. And it'll spark right up. And then we're going to turn it down, medium, low, whatever setting you might need if you want to use the stove. And all three burners work the same way. The oven is a little bit different. The manual's there for the oven. Essentially, you're going to turn it to pilot. You have to use a lighter to light it. There's a little bit more of an involved process.